So we've got a 2007 Lexus IS220, going to be replacing the rear near side, the left hand side, hub carrier and wheel bearing. When I was trying to change the brake discs, I found that the caliper was seized to the sliding pin in the bottom, and I tried to free it by hitting it with a hammer, which is not a good idea because the caliper here bolts onto these two alloy lugs that are on the casting, and the bottom lug here snapped off on the one that's on the car. So this is a replacement hub carrier that I sourced from a breaker's yard, and I've pressed in two new bushes, rubber bushes, lower and the upper bush, and this rose bush here. It's three different parts. If you try to source this from Lexus, they'll only sell one unit. So if you want to get it from a breaker's yard, you probably need to put new bushes and rose bush in. The only people I could find that sourced this was this refurbish.com. It actually comes from Estonia. About 4 or 5 days delivery to the UK. 46 euros I think, which is a lot cheaper than the assembly itself from Lexus Direct. It was £370. Yeah, so this from the breaker's yard, £65 delivered, 46 euros for the bushes. I actually had to burn the old ones out. The bolts were seized into the centres from the breakers, so I gas torched the centre out, cut it out with a hacksaw blade, and then the outer sheath of the bush, just tickled it out with the hacksaw blade and screwdriver to burst it out. So then pressed the new ones in, a combination of a socket, vice and a bit of threaded rod, and just used that to draw the new bushes in. So first thing I'll do is take the wheel off, take off the centre cap, put the wheel back on, and then I'll try and take off the centre nut once I've freed up the retaining dimple. So that's the wheel off. Whilst I had it off, took the centre cap out and used a cold chisel and a hammer and tried to take off the lock nut dimple that's on the wheel. Try and make the nut come off a bit easier. So it's a 32mm and it's a 12 point that you need on the socket. So the handbrake is on. I haven't bothered to put the locking wheel nut back on. I'm just got the wheel on the ground for some extra traction. Handbrake's going to go on, and then big long breaker lever, and see if we can get this nut off. Yep, so this came off pretty easy. 32mm socket. For context, it's a 4-foot extension bar. The wheel did want to turn a bit, even with the car's weight on the ground and the parking brake on. It scuffed a little bit, but then it just, big crack, and the nuts started turning. So yeah, next wheel off. So wheels off, and just having a look. This is what's broken here. The caliper, the bolt that fixes the calipers from the bottom is broken, or the casting, so this hinges from here. So if your caliper is seized, what you need to do is you need to disconnect the hydraulic hose, remove the caliper mounting bracket bolts, take the whole assembly off and work on it in a vise. Don't try and hit it whilst it's attached to the car, she'll snap the alloy casting. Yeah, so wheel bearings just arrived, just a cheap one. This carrier. Tyres back off again. Just having a look, see what I need to do here. So I had a look online to see if there was anything much about this car, and there's not really anything to speak of in detail. I was concerned about this bolt here because a lot of the ones online say it's an adjustable camber bolt, but it looks to just be a normal bolt on this IS220d. It could explain a lot, because when I was talking to the breakers about getting a new one of these carriers for the broken casting, they told me I couldn't have one from a petrol car because it was different. But the only thing I can see that's actually different is this rose bush here that's pressed in at the bottom, which is a slightly different part number on the diesel as opposed to the petrol. So if you're just looking for the casting, I don't think there's any difference if you're going to change the bushes anyway, like I've done. There's a bit of a problem. So I'm hoping here that the caliper will just come off, no issue. This brake disc is only really held with the caliper. Caliper bracket, two bolts. I'll just zip tie this out of the way, and then to hit the disc off, like I say, there's nothing holding it on but friction. Make sure the parking brake's off, it should just come off. If not, you screw these bolts into these two holes. There's two holes here, one there, one there. Make sure the parking brake's off, or you'll break the brake shoe pins that are holding the brake shoes in place. So yeah, that should come off. The two ball joints I'm hoping will come apart if I simultaneously hit both sides with a hammer at the same time. After I slacken this bolt, then it should come off. I'll probably take the nut off completely first, because it's there's no hex or anything in the end of the ball joint, so if it starts to spin there might be some issues. So I might take the nuts off completely and do the simultaneous hit with the hammer. If not, I do have a ball joint separator tool, which isn't very good. So I'm hoping those will come apart. This upper bush and lower bush, which are underneath, I can't take a picture of that just now. The upper and lower, this one here and this one here, they were seized when I got this from the breaker. They just cut the tie rods that were going to the car with a saw, and just gave me this whole assembly complete with a sawn off tie rod and a seized bolt. And those were an actual nightmare to get out of the bushes. Destroyed the bushes getting them out. So I'm hoping they won't come out in the car without too much issue. If they don't, then I might have to cut the bolts and get new bolts. But the issue with this adjustable camber bolt here, which you might have on a petrol car, it's a smaller bolt with a disc. If you look online, I was going to mark it with a pen. I don't think I'll need to now. So start stripping down and see how we get on. Start the strip down. I really need to strip the brake shoes off and the bits and pieces, the jewellery that goes with that, but getting a bit carried away with myself, and I've started taking off. I took off the caliper and the caliper mounting bracket. You see where it broke off the lug at the bottom there. It was broken off. Yeah, so tied the caliper up out the way. Just left it as an assembly. I just changed the pads. That's how I broke the lug. So I've just pushed the piston back with plumber's wrenches. Just grab the top of the pad and give it a little squeeze. So now I need to take off all the brake shoes and all the bits and pieces. The ball joint's actually split really easy. Took the nut completely off, and 2 hammers. I hit one either side of the back of the ball joint and the front. Not too hard, don't want to mushroom the end or damage the threads, but just good solid knock, and they just both these just pop off. No problem at all. This bush here and the bottom bush are the ones I'm concerned about. I think they might be problematic, hard to split. This one, the rose bush at the bottom, I think won't be such an issue. And I've also just given this centre drive shaft a bit of a tap just to try and make sure there's no lock between the splines of the wheel bearing and the drive shaft when I pull this whole assembly off. Yeah, and I got my new wheel bearing now, just got delivered. So that'll be going on at the same time as the reconditioned replacement hub carrier. So taking these little spring clips off the shoes, just a little tip. When you start pushing in the cup on the end of the spring, the pin will move with it. So what you can do is just stick a screwdriver in behind and lever the back of the pin to hold the pin straight. Make sure you're not against the ABS sensor, and yeah, that will hold the pin firm. And use a set of pliers and just twist the cup. Push the spring, twist the cup, come off, no problem at all. It's a good idea also to take some pictures if you're not sure. You'll remember how everything went back together. To take some photographs. These are not all the same on different cars, so it can sometimes be a bit confusing. And make sure you remember which way the adjuster faces, up and down, so that you can make that go back together again. Yeah, so I've been at this maybe just over 1 hour, and as you can see, got everything stripped down. One last bolt to remain to take out, which is this bottom bolt here into the rose joint. I just put the nut back on the ball joint to sort of secure it. These arms go onto the bush's top and bottom. They actually came off not too bad. The bolts were a little bit rusted in. I was expecting, having stripped down the one that I received from the breakers, that I would need new bolts. So I was prepared to cut these and then get new bolts. Luckily, not ordered them, so don't need those. Hopefully this last one will come out without too much issue. I would say that you might need to cut these if this is properly seized in, and just cut away the inside of the bush. If you're going to replace the bushes anyway, you might be as well to do that. If the bolt does not turn inside the bush, I mean, the one that received from the breakers had a huge mushroom on the end of it because the guy had obviously hit it with a hammer for so long and not got it to move. So I couldn't get it to move either. Ended up heating it up and burning out the rubber core with the bolt still held in the metal sleeve. So yeah, I've disconnected the ABS sensor, which is down behind here. So just this last bolt, and then hopefully the whole hub together with the wheel bearing, the carrier will come off, which is good because I wasn't wanting to split the carrier from the bearing because it can be quite hard to split. But hopefully it should just slide off the splines on the drive shaft, and then the new one will go on, and then hopefully that should be fine. So just before I forget to mention, there is 2 small 10mm nuts that go directly behind the parking brake cable, and that prevents the parking brake, holds the parking brake into the hub carrier onto this back of this bracket here, which is not easily seen. So yeah, you need to take those two nuts off if you're going to take the whole carrier, otherwise. But yeah, everything else is off now. That bolt came out without issue, better than the other ones. So yeah, just tap the centre spline a little bit, and I'm going to just draw forward the hub carrier and take the whole thing off. Yep, so here is the carrier and bearing assembly. Got it off the car, no problem at all. Just a little tap on the centre of the drive shaft as I eased it forward, and it just came away, no problems. So now this is the one with the broken lug. There's only one lug there. The other one's lying over there somewhere. I can strip all this down and transfer all the jewellery onto the new bit, the replacement. So this ABS sensor here, I have no idea how this is supposed to come out. I ended up having to drill the one out of it just snapped. I tried to twist it, tried to pull it, it just snapped. Brittle, old. I wonder if it's glued in. There's a lot of cathodic corrosion in the alloy. When you start sticking the screwdriver in vice grips and things, try to twist it, it's just not moving. So I'm just going to leave that. I ordered another one anyway before I started this job, but it's coming from China or something. It's about £8.50, £9. If you buy them from a UK on eBay, they're 60, 70, £80. So wait a bit longer, probably be waiting a few weeks, and I'll just stick that in when I get it. It's not a big issue, the car will run. I'll just get a warning light on the dashboard, ABS, traction control and things. So yeah, I'll just strip this down, rebuild it. I've cracked all these. These are the 4 bolts that hold the wheel bearing. New wheel bearings here, so that'll go on. I'll use the bolts. And I need to separate the assembly also to get this dust cover back. I'll give that a wire brush and a quick coat of satin black whilst I'm doing this. Give it all a good clean up, and then yeah, strip it down, rebuild it, and get back to reassemble again. Yep, so here is the rebuilt hub carrier and wheel bearing assembly. I just used the old dust cover from the car. It's in a bit of a poor state, but I don't fancy spending money, so I've just given it a clean up and a wee dust in a black satin. Still looks a bit of a mess. So cleaned up all the threads and all the bolts that came off with a wire brush and the vise. Give them a good old wire brush, got rid of all the old thread lock, and yeah, just ready to start reassembling really. Thing I note, the wheel bearing separation from the old hub took a fair bit of separation. You can see all the corrosion from the dissimilar metals. Yeah, so it takes a fair bit of a scalp, so I don't know how easy that would come off the car if you didn't take the whole carrier off. And this ABS sensor seems to be bonded in or something. You take the bolt out, no. So new one's on order anyway. I'll just have to run without ABS sensor for a few days until it turns up. Yeah, so just reassembly. So an update now, that's me reassembled the hub carrier with the new wheel bearing onto the car. Just loosely at the moment. I need to go and torque all the bolts correctly, but yeah, everything's brake cables back on from behind, 10mm. I put the broken sensor back on just to stop dirt getting in, stop the cable hanging about until I get the new ABS sensor. So it's just there, but it's actually just a dummy. And I still have to tighten all the bolts on the bushes in the rose joints and ball joints. So yeah, and then I have to just reassemble brake shoes. I've just loosely put the drive shaft nut on. I haven't tightened it yet, and I haven't locked it with the chisel. So yeah, just to reassemble, it's probably been 3.5 hours working at this disassembly, reassembly, totally excluding the time it took me to press out the bushes and stuff, because that was a good afternoon I spent doing that. Stripping down the carrier I got from the breaker's yard. So yeah, just a quick reassembly, and I'll go get a cup of tea first. Yeah, so brake shoes are on now. These clips with the springs are a bit of a pain. They're not too bad to get off if you can lever in behind the top here. You can either get a screwdriver in, or I was using a chisel to jam the top one so that I could play with it easier. And the bottom one, you can actually just get your finger up in behind to compress these. So to push the pins through from back, I use a magnetic screwdriver. This is a spare pin I had from the one from the breakers, and you just feed it through from behind. There's a hole there for it, top and bottom one. They might fall out occasionally, rethreading through. I got fed up trying to get the clips on after a few minutes, so I made a tool. It's just it's a coach bolt here. What I did was I just locked and added 2 nuts to the end and left a little countersink. So what I did was I lined up the holes in the bearing with the spring, and I held the pin from behind with my finger, and I just pushed the cap in and rotated. It was enough to jam it. I had to take off and use some pliers just to get it into the dimples. But yeah, little tool solves the job a lot easier than playing around. So yeah, brake shoes back on now, just to get the disc on, which is just slot it on top. I'll adjust the brake shoes, make sure the disc lines up with one of these holes on the rubber. The rubber part here comes out, and you can stick a screwdriver through, and you want to adjust the handbrake up so it's just not quite releasing, and then just click it back a notch, and then yeah, caliper on, reassemble. I'll torque this central nut when the wheel's on, take the wheel off, and then I'll put chisel the locking mechanism, which is a notch. I'll chisel the nut so that it sits in the notch, and then I can put the wheel on properly with the centre cap. So last bit, brakes on, calipers back on, lubricated up the pins to slide them. I put a new rubber boot on the bottom slider pin, which was seized before, the thing that was the reason I broke the casting. So now the wheel's back on, just with 3 studs. I'm just going to, weight's back on the ground, handbrake's on. I'm going to torque the centre nut that goes onto the drive shaft. Then I will take the wheel off, and I will cold chisel the nut. Here's the old one. I'll cold chisel with a hammer and chisel a wedge down into the drive shaft, and that will stop the nut coming loose. So yeah, that's how it's done on most cars, unless you've got a Rolls Royce or something where the threads are clockwise to undo on the one side of the car and counterclockwise the other. So this is it. So yeah, so that's my car finished. apart from the ABS sensor. So dashboard's lit up like Christmas, warning me no ABS, no traction control, but can live with that for a few days until the bit arrives. So yeah, it seems to be fine. I'll know better once I've done a road test. But 6 o'clock now, started at 10 o'clock, been doing a few other jobs today. Don't know, 5 or 6 hours. Strip down, refit, plus the time spent yesterday, another 5 or 6 hours probably rebuilding the hub carrier that I got from the breakers.